great welcome, and I welcome all my panelists. Can we please take a seat? Well, the energy that has been set in has been really very, very infectious, and I do believe that we will try to keep that pouring in throughout the discussion that we have had. Although I know that some topics can be a little academic, but that is the fulcrum of that is the focus of why we have all assembled here. So, without much ado, before we go into a systematic round of discussions, I would really want to add some context to this discussion. Now, while I was having my lunch, there were several colleagues from the cybersecurity fraternity, and they were all talking about, various incidents that have happened, how systems got compromised, things like those which have really become common parlance. Now, so we all understand, going by what our peers are saying, going by what media reports are saying, that the threat landscape has really evolved, the threat vectors have evolved, and consequently, the costs of cybercrime has really, really increased. In fact, I just came across this statistics that today it is the third largest economy after the US and China. So we are all trying to understand how hackers and cybercrime has really become sophisticated on one hand. On the other hand, we do find enterprises trying their best in terms of tools and technologies to stay up to date. However, incidents are also increasing. So we will really try and understand why this is happening, and if there is a need to revisit cybersecurity as a discipline, and what new approaches can be had. So with these words, I would really want to kickstart the discussion today, and for which I would want to go for introductory remarks to Praveen. So Praveen, what are your initial thoughts about this, and particularly in the context of the threat landscape?
Yep. So the pandemic has reshaped the way we operate or we execute things, right from shopping to banking. Okay, and digitization is going to increase way further. So now, in terms of the business or context, the applications are no longer hosted within our four boundaries. So now we have moved to cloud. We are using fintech, or rather in the banking space, we are dependent on fintech companies as well. So the attack surface has increased by leaps and bounds, and so is the attack vectors. So that's where we have an immediate need to adapt to the new environment, and also increases the cybersecurity controls or the framework accordingly. So with that, we all have experienced couple of attacks. There was a recent, right, from Uber. There were tons of attacks. And even a 18-year guy or a 13-year, guys are able to hack to the ID systems. So now the attack vectors has increased very much. There are state-sponsored attacks and these new kids. Okay, so that's why the landscape has increased very rapidly. So along with the digitization, so hence the need to modernize cybersecurity as per our business environment is very high. And now we are living in a boundaryless environment. Earlier, you are as secure as the employees are sitting within your perimeter or within the boundaries. Now with work from home, or also the applications being available, your identity is the only key for your for a breach. So there are tons of risk involved in that, and that's why we have a need to modernize the cybersecurity. Yep.
Right. Pushkal, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I'm audible to the back. I think Praveen has summed it up pretty well, but a couple of things I want to add. How does the threat landscape look like? The blast radius has increased. That's the very first point, which is what causing a lot of cyber issues. When I say blast radius, obviously when we look at it, there's a hybrid environment we are living in that has caused a little bit of an uptick. that has eventually increasing the threat for us. Now, a lot of these guys that we, who are building up a cybersecurity solution, a lot of focus is going to our ransomware protection. Now, I just want to bring everybody's attention is that ransomware is nothing new. It's been there. I mean, it wasn't a problem in 2005, wasn't a problem in 2009, suddenly became a problem in 2009, 2010. And the reason for that is that it's the Bitcoin distributed ledger that has propelled the ransomware. It is a very big, sophisticated industry, which is really adding a lot of uptick to the threat landscape. So I think these are the two very important point, and the data again being a very important element for every organization. A lot of data theft is also adding a bit of a push to this threat landscape. The Yeah, I think that these are three most important point in terms of the way in which the threat is increasing.
Right, right. Wonderful points coming from both the panelists in the sense that, you brought the attention towards ransomware while you spoke about it being a perimeter-less world today. Wonderful points coming from both of you. Amit, your views on this?
Uh, Perimeter is shrinking for sure. I mean, data is everywhere. That remains the basic funda. If I look at concept of digital world together, I won't hesitate to say that we're talking security because there's digitization everywhere, right? The core reason why we need to protect and what we need to protect, because data has been digitized and data has been moved in every nook and corner on every device. That remains the ground fact. So I think in simple words, it's going to be available for everyone, available every time, available on every device. And the difficult job which we as a security practitioners will have is protect it every time. We have to be successful every time. And as it says that hacker has to be successful only one, we have to be up against them.
Right. So basically what the point was that you were trying to make is that there has been a great increase in digitalization, which we see all around. Adoption of new and emerging technologies, IoT, cloud, AI, ML, all of that. Now, coupled with a huge explosion in end devices also, I think this has really led to an enormous increase in the attack surface, which wasn't there before. So in that light, do you think that this push towards digitalization is actually something which is driving the threat landscape or leading to a spike in cybersecurity risks?
Absolutely. Digitalization has really changed the game completely. Data is, as I said, everywhere. We have, earlier it used to be on-premise, right? I mean, now we worry about cloud. We have something more on-premise, a public cloud, private cloud, applications everywhere. That remains the topmost priority. How do we secure? There's also one point which comes to my mind is that with COVID, our tech landscape has changed. We have tech debt, which is increased. You have the erstwhile technology which is running, which is still being used, while we have to adopt more and new technologies to really serve our current demands. So tech debt has gone up. We have to run both the things. Security is no more a simple game. The manpower who are managing that infrastructure needs to be trained on both sides, right? Retaining those people have become a challenge. So digitization and security has to go hand in hand. Every organization is creating application. Every organization on cloud is on cloud, on-premise, or somewhere on public-private cloud. Applications are everywhere, and hence we need to see that security cannot come at the end of it when the applications are live onto the cloud. It has to be in line at the time of creation.
Absolutely. Security can never be an afterthought, is basically what you are trying to say, and which is a very, very relevant and a very pertinent topic that we have. Now, Amit, you have spoken about the fact that enterprises today exist in a multi-cloud, hybrid cloud kind of an environment. Two very important points that you made. One was about cloud and it has come to acquire the status of the fulcrum of digital transformation journey for enterprises. And secondly, you also spoke about the unprecedented circumstances which existed during the past 2 years, which has also led to this kind of a new trend where we see a lot of digitalization followed by concomitantly an increase in cybersecurity risks. Ritesh, your views on both these subjects, if you would like.
So first thing is that digitization is now need for the business, and second thing is that your threat actors, especially from a digital scenario, is also increasing. Second thing is that business is also very dependent on the digital data. If your application is down, your operations is down, your business is going to be suffered. So basis that, because if you see our previous stages, people are carrying a two copy of data, one may be a physical copy and one may be a digital copy. But now everybody is transforming entire basically operation using the digital transformation activity. Data become very critical. Second thing is the threat, especially from a threat actor point of view. I'm just giving example like everybody is trying to adopt cloud kind of transformation, and cloud security posture management is one of the very very important thing for us. How the now attackers are now change their basically approach to identify the new threat actors, new basically landscape, especially in the cloud scenario. They are just trying to basically target one of the VPC segment, and maybe one of the machine which is just start giving you some abnormal behavior. That may become one new threat actor for you. You need to redefine your strategy. Again, I'm saying security and attackers, they also know the nature of your business. And they're always trying to basically exploit a new way to attack your basically landscape. And we need to basically build some kind of mechanism so that you have to understand what kind of method they're opting to basically breach the data. So I think that is the method every organization is evolving. And especially from a digital transformation point of view, your maximum data is basically exposed to the internet, where your protection mechanism needs to be defined differently.
Yes. So, you spoke eloquently about it. Now, I would really want to go to Sakshi. Sakshi, I want to make the discussion more granular in the sense that he gave a very top level, thing on cloud and also the conditions which existed over the past 2 years, which led to a huge uptick in digitalization. How do you think that, do you think that these are challenges that the industry is currently facing?
Sure, thanks. So, first of all, I'd like to start by saying that these are my personal thoughts and not of my organization that I work for. Secondly, I'd like to say that, yes, you're absolutely right. The heat is still on. Despite 2 years of a disruptive global pandemic, we are still continuing to see a rise in the cyber risks and data breaches and all of that. But yeah, coming to the challenges, I feel like the biggest challenge is that making sure cybersecurity is aligned to the business objectives. So there are two categories of CISOs. One is the compliance driven and the other is the data driven. Now, the data driven CISOs are, making sure that security is a top priority. The goals are aligned with the, organization's goals. We are contributing to the growth of the organization by minimizing the security risks and making sure security is at the top and center of the priorities of the company. And that I feel is a big challenge to be able to overcome by aligning with the business goals. Also, cybersecurity, like you said, should not be an afterthought. So, for example, like, you're building a house and then, the foundation is not strong. So that's how important cybersecurity is to, in these big transformational projects for digital transformation. The other thing that I'd like to focus on is it was briefly touched upon by another panelist, is that seek talent and teach skills. We are facing a huge shortage of there's a daunting pressure on labor shortage and skills, and so training of the people to keep up with these new technologies that are coming with digital is of prime importance. So investment in security teams is really required. That is one of the big challenges that is being faced across organizations, in my personal experience. And because you may be doing all, for example, you may be doing all for your health. You're walking the 10,000 steps and eating right and all of that, but you end up on the road driving recklessly and not wearing a seat belt. So that's how important, teaching how to use these tools in cybersecurity to the teams is. So, right people at the, and the focus on investing in security teams is another big challenge. And yeah.
Wonderful. So, Sakshi, sticking on to you for the time being, you spoke about a lot of CISOs being compliance driven, which is kind of a checklist approach that you check the boxes. Of late, this kind of an approach has come under some kind of a criticism also, that it's not leading to a really strong cybersecurity posture. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think enterprises need to increase their risk appetite or become more risk based approach, something like that?
I think that security leaders need to join hands with business. They need to be involved at the beginning of the project and stay till the end, from start to end of the digital transformation. And that is where So, for example, my experience, I was previously working at Yum Brands and leading security for the Asia Pac region, and it was a large region. And keeping up with that, so we used to ensure that I was like traveling 50 to 60% of my time, meeting the teams in the markets. So engagement with the employees and with the key stakeholders across all your different areas, including different teams and functions, be it your legal team, be it your marketing, your product operations, various functions that are there in an organization. So cybersecurity is all across. Engagement is required all across of these functions. So it has to be a joint effort. There has to be unity between the C-suite and the CISO. And that is where we'll be able to tackle with this. And I really am not a big advocate of the compliance-based approach.
Wonderful. That's a very nuanced answer and a nuanced response to the question that I posed. Pushkal, your views on this, and I would really want you to focus on a critical sector like cloud. Do you see it as a challenge, and what are the challenges as far as cybersecurity is concerned?
Absolutely, it's a very good question. Now, see, the cloud is the need of the hour, and every business is going to it. But the problem is that a lot of people not really understanding what kind of explicit and implicit risks that are coming along with it. People still have a very lift and shift approach. You see what I mean? So they have been used to a certain style of working, and they sort of carry forward to the cloud. That's the very big error that happens. Suddenly, what is happening? You're moving the things onto the cloud and you're not managing the same way. So it needs a change, not just adopting to the new technology, but the way in which you are managing it and the processes around it. The second big problem that I see with the cloud is, and it is also very common and still ranked number one, is the misconfiguration. Now, people are used to of getting away by making a little mistake in their on-prem environment, and that is not being blown out of the proportion. But the minute this thing get exposed to the cloud, it blows out of the proportion, because on a daily basis, there are millions of scans happening all over the internet. So the margin of errors are not that many that you could just go ahead and lift and shift and be done with it. The third part is that cloud offers so many nicer way of doing the business transformation. There is a certain amount of hasteness with the business to go to it, because you then don't worry about it, all the orchestra that goes behind running a technology. You just rent it, pay as much as required, and then start using it. I'll give you one example of data insights management, data analytics. A lot of transformation is going to leverage the cloud services. Organizations are pulling the data across the environment, be it ERP, be it CRM, and they're populating it to something called data lake, again on the cloud. Now this data lake is then again fed to something called data warehousing, and there is a lot of analysis is running on it, which is at the end giving up master insights to the business users. Now if you look at this entire pipeline, which is so promising, but it has at least 70 different loopholes. So if business and cybersecurity don't work on this together, then what happens? You learn from your mistakes, and which is not really a great proposition to be in. So those will be some of the thoughts that I say should be kept in mind when it comes to cloud security piece.
The reason why I, really focused on the cloud bit is that a lot of enterprises today are on cloud, and it has become kind of integral to the digital transformation efforts of organizations. In fact, can we have a show of hands? How many of your enterprises are on the cloud? Huge numbers. And do you think that security is a concern when you are traversing this digital transformation journey towards the cloud? Okay, very few hands. So, I mean, the others are not forthcoming enough, which is all right. We are in the business and we are talking about security and safety. So, it's better to be safe under one's skin first than being safe in the systems. Of course. So, that is one of the reasons why I focused on cloud. Now, I really want to go to Mitesh. Mitesh, something we spoke about earlier also is that the past 2 years have been, unprecedented. Lot of changes happened. So, from cybersecurity point of view, what were the particular challenges that you encountered, and you think that there are several enterprises which have been encountering that?
Last 2 years for cyber has been transformational, especially the work from home transition, which has been witnessed by all of us. So, all of us have crossed the bridge, but then there are a whole lot of other activities which are now coming up. And we are realizing more and more that it is not as much as the external threat which is always present, but also the internal threat that we have to take care of. So, one of the most frequently cited examples are the insider threats or the phishing attacks, which are being crafted specifically for individuals or organizations or teams. And there have been instances which I'm sure most of us has witnessed, where senior executive mails are received. So, most of the panel members have covered areas of technology and cyber and external threats. We also need to take care of internal threats, and that's where concepts like zero trust, which is actually a journey, comes into picture. So I think what we all need to do is, one, segment the data as much as we can, and two, look at how we can educate our resources inside and customers outside, both, so that all our touch points are taken care of, right? It's been a journey, I think, well covered till now, because despite smooth transition to work from home, there has been very few incidents on those fronts. It has been the phishing and the other various areas which has come. So one is technology and other is the process or the people part which we need to take care of, which is, I think, coming up more often now.
Right. So, Mitesh, you spoke about internal threats. Would you like to elaborate on them? I mean, do you think the pandemic has had an impact of some kind on the trends related to insider threats? Do you think they have increased, decreased? What has happened with the perimeter becoming really disposed of? What do you think about it?
So that's putting in more challenges for tech manager. As we said, at the end of the day, it's, till now we had all our eggs in one basket, which is in the data center. Now we need to look at how we take care of them further and put in additional layers, or probably we can look at putting up a air gap system so that the data is not reachable. So I think once that is taken care of, then comes the next part about the data breach, if ever there is. And we today have to acknowledge that yes, we have to be prepared for it, and how soon and how quick we recover from it. So I guess if organizations look at securing the data, even if it is within its own premises, it will go a long way. Probably the controls that we put on cloud, like encryption of data before it leaves your perimeter. So if we are able to ensure some key data fields are encrypted, then it will take care of all our requirements. And even if there is a leakage, there is only limited impact. Like, I'm sure you must have read that Australia's largest telco today has been compromised and a lot of data has gone out. So, but if the data is secure or encrypted, there is little impact that you would have in such cases. So, segmenting of data, controlling user accesses, and air gaps with this are transformations that we have to necessarily adopt soon.
Excellent points coming from you, Mitesh. And of course, with the perimeter completely disappearing, those are very pertinent points. Praveen, you want to add something?
So I think there was some survey done, and 71% of the attacks are through phishing, and probably ransomware is probably one of the other methods, the next method to exploit. Okay, so we can put devices, WAF, firewall, controlled access, everything. But at the end of the day, the internal threat, the employee, that is the biggest risk we have. creating awareness is certainly the maximum stuff we can do, as Smith has rightly said. Segmentation, role-based access. We can put all the controls, but then we cannot control the human. So that's where the biggest risk what we have is certainly the internal, because for other external attack vectors, we have technical solutions, threat intel, WAF, IPS. There are a couple of controls available which can certainly block the attacks to a major extent. But then the internal threats are probably the bigger risk to handle. And probably phishing is the most easiest. Any employee can get swindled away with the fact he is getting a Louis Vuitton discount, or an income tax department is rating free Amazon vouchers, and he can give away his credentials or even lead to a data leakage. So, yeah.
Right. Excellent points. Now, I really want to come to you, Dr. Yask, and which is, so Yask, my question to you is, do you think that there are existing gaps in enterprise security that need to be managed or bridged?
Right. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. And I'll start with a disclaimer. I'm here in my personal capacity. On this part, I was having somebody, I had participated in an online, this kind of a conversation. And somebody in my office called me up and asked me this question, something about security. I started off with this thing. No, this is a disclaimer. These are my personal views. Obviously, the conversation went downhill after that. So, right, coming back to the gaps, yes, I think that's why we are talking about it.
And
right?
my question is in the particular context of the industry that you come from, critical sectors. I mean, do you think, IT, OT environments, do they talk to each other? What are the challenges? Things like those.
Yes, IT and OT is converging. In fact, it has been in that process or journey for some time now. Unfortunately, we have not really woken up to it. 2010 Stuxnet happened, and it's what, 2022. You go to any of these critical, not to mine, some other critical organizations, and probably go and ask this question, how Stuxnet happened. Would you be able to detect it today? Would you be able to protect it? That's the kind of a question, I think he pointed out that we have to learn from our mistakes. Unfortunately, what we do is we only prepare for the crisis that has already happened. We never anticipate. And this is a bigger point. This is not just about IT, OT. The point is that we have gone beyond the time of this air gapping, at least in most of the industries. There are no air gaps now. Let's understand, accept, and acknowledge that the data is now to be consumed in IT from OT. Therefore, once the marriage happens, obviously you have to look at so many things, right? OT was totally untouched in the sense that the IT people never wanted to get in that area, never wanted to understand as a matter of fact, as recent as 2021, when there was a pipeline attack and the whole pipeline was shut down or brought to a halt, it is being said that it was a collateral damage. Why? Because the people who were managing this did not understand whether the attack is meant for OT or is meant only for IT. So that is the kind of understanding that where we are even now, and that too coming from a country or a place which is supposed to have maybe slightly better in terms of the infra and all those things. So the point is that, are we understanding what is happening? Again, fundamentals, IT, OT, IIoT. While OT is a very dear subject to me, my thesis was in this only. So just one point on the OT security, we follow a certain framework, which is the Purdue model, which generally a lot of people would be aware of that. Unfortunately, by IIoTs and all these coming into the picture, that whole model has collapsed. I would not want to get into the technicalities. The idea is that the way that we used to look at the data being funneled from one single place is no more happening. Therefore, it is now important to understand the gaps in the system. Your question was about whether the gaps are there. Yes, the gaps are there, but I think the question should be, are we really knowing where the gaps are? Or a even more basic question is, are we knowing what our assets are? We always keep on harping upon this point that the first fundamental thing is that you should know, what you see you can't, or what you don't see you can't protect. The point is that half of the times, the people who are managing or the people who are owning these systems would not know the system completely. Therefore, to detect whether it is a system error or a cyber induced attack, it's very difficult. So simple point, it's not about OTIT, it's all about knowing the vulnerabilities in the system. And just one last point, which I borrow from the military people, they say that the cyber or the physical war is always by generation of force. The cyber war is never by generation of force. It's always by exploiting of the vulnerabilities. If you know the vulnerabilities, I think by and large you would cover the landscape. Thank you.
Well, if I just can
Yeah,
quickly
yeah.
add one point here. I think it is also very important to understand that cybersecurity is just not has been the problem of management and behavior. Cybersecurity just not has been the problem of management and behavior. There has been a huge gap between the product companies and the cybersecurity problem. Now, obviously, not 100% of the cybersecurity can be solved by products, but now at least in last 3 to 5 years, there is a better match between the security product that have been offered and the problem that we are dealing with. Now you hear the things like micro segmentation. I fail to understand that why this should not have been there, let's say 7 years before, mainstream. Now we hear things like extended detection and response. This is what we need because we are trying to cater the business at the endpoint level, at the network level, at the perimeter level. And you gotta be able to take the intelligence from all these layers and give it to us. But this took a long time for it to come where it is right now. So I think this journey is at very interesting juncture at the moment, where at least there are products which are matching the problem that we want to solve. Otherwise, who could say even today that I want to solve a ransomware problem? Tell me, is there any product that can solve it? But it needs to be solved. So this is what the point that I want to make, that not all problems are management and behavior. There's a product problem also coming in, which is not matching the problems we have.
Right. So something that Dr. Yask spoke about, and so that is something which has really caught my attention. When you said that it's been more than 10 years that the Stuxnet attack happened. Even to this day, do you have the capability to detect it when it happens? What do you do if it does happen? Very pertinent points coming from Yask, and which would really provoke some thoughts amongst us as to the cybersecurity postures that we have, that our organizations have. Interesting points coming from you as well. Now, Vijay, I really want to go to you for this. So he says that there are gaps, and do you think that there is a need for modernization, particularly with respect to the cybersecurity architecture that currently exists?
No, absolutely. I mean, there are gaps, and this cat and mouse game, I think we have been playing from last 30 years, and I don't think it will be over in our lifetime. But I see it as a sign of maturity and evolution, right? I mean, the reason there are gaps demonstrates that there is something which is moving ahead of the current state of security, right? I mean, we talked about cloud, we talked about a lot of technological changes which is happening at enterprise level. At the end of the day, business is all about agility, right? I mean, it used to take 3 months to stand up an application, which can now be done in 3 days, right? And at the end of the day, our responsibility is to be able to support business. So what we have to understand is that the way the IT is getting delivered is evolving so fast, and security has to catch up, right? And then security will always be a step behind, because unless some of those concepts, some of those way you want to deliver IT gets established, then many times that as we all have been talking about it, security always have been an afterthought. But eventually that's how the whole evolution and innovation is also going on, right? So fundamentally that gap will be there. And then second is again, one is of course one of the technology gaps. So really, as you also touched about in terms of, do we have the security capabilities today to be able to completely secure the kind of challenges which we face today, right? AI ML has been of great use. We have seen certain use cases at network level where it has really helped us to identify those anomalous behaviors and all. But you look at some of the other use cases, right? In terms of if you try to mimic some of the business scenarios, for example, take cases of data loss prevention or DLP, the kind of false positives, the kind of exceptions which we have to manage has been tremendous, right? So there's still need of more AI ML capabilities, more mimicking of human behavior to be able to identify what are those suspicious transactions versus non-suspicious transactions, right? So one, of course, there are a lot of technology gaps for which we have to really make sure that we understand what are those gaps. And in the current available capability from a tool perspective, platform perspective, what all things can be put in place. The second important thing is the human thought. I mean, Justice talked about the whole area of privacy, right? And the way people start thinking about security, some of those privacy concerns is also evolving. I mean, I know from last 10 years, we have put a lot of effort to centralize identities, put in single sign-on solutions, right? But suddenly there's a talk of zero trust architecture, which says don't trust anybody. There is a talk of decentralized identities where you want to give control of identities to their users. So again, security has to again start thinking, how do I address these issues, right? So modernization, of course, is required at technology level. Modernization is required from a thought perspective level in terms of understanding. And another very important thing which is happening is the traditional gap between IT versus security is diminishing, right? Today, if you look at your application development guys, they have to understand security because it's part of the whole CI/CD cycle. At the same level, I mean, there are no system administrators, there are no separate security administrators. The person who is deploying those workloads onto the cloud has to understand security. So some of the traditional ways in which we were delivering security has to go away. I mean, that's not working. And in fact, it's impacting as an impediment to the kind of agility which business wants to take. I have seen many cases where I was part of some DevSecOps kind of evaluations. And the complaint was that the security team is causing too many breaks in the whole CI/CD process, right? And there are so many false positives coming out of it, and the releases are getting delayed because of fixing vulnerabilities, which first of all don't exist. There's a lot of false positive, right? So how do you really create that fine balance of usability and of course user experience? Today, everything is about user experience. I mean, you can close everything, you can put all the boundaries, but that will be anti-business, right? And people will not like it. And the biggest asset we have today is people. So there's a lot of process changes, a lot of technology changes, a lot of, as I said, mindset changes has to happen for us to be really able to manage some of these security challenges. But I definitely see it as a positive, right? I mean, this definitely shows we are evolving as a race.
It definitely shows that we are evolving as a race. And I do agree with you that cybersecurity is like a cat and a mouse game, and traditional models will fall short, as technology evolves. Now it's really time to bring in Pankaj into the discussions. Pankaj, you have had a wholesome perspective from the information technology leaders here. What are your views on that? To what people have spoken about, and also what do you think would be the important ingredients of a strategy for a strong cybersecurity posture for organizations?
So first of all, some of the common themes that I could pick up from this good conversation is all of us believe that 4 or 5 major areas that we are talking about is cloud, we're talking about digital transformation, we're talking about work from home, we're talking about IT/OT, and we're concerned about when the organization is moving ahead with these initiatives, how does the security go along on this journey? When we look at the common theme across these 4 areas, and we understand that from a cybersecurity perspective, the real attack vector is the application, right? Now, in last 5-7 years, there has been a lot of development that has happened across multiple areas of the application, such as web traffic, email traffic, and there are sufficient tools that are available. But one area which I strongly believe that there is kind of an imbalance as to who is able to take the advantage more, the good guys or the bad guys. Right now, the DNS protocol, as I see from the historical information of the cyber attacks, the bad guys have an advantage because they use it very, very effectively. While the good guys have the
opportunity to be able to use it for the good cause, but right now it is the imbalance. And that happens because of multiple reasons. We look at the sheer size of the transaction any enterprise could have, give or take, let's say, 10,000 employees, there could be hundreds of millions of DNS transactions in a given day. That makes it very, very difficult for reactive measures. That makes it very, very tough for somebody to look at those individual instances and take an action on top of it. And that is the reason, I mean, the panelists said the Stuxnet, the recent example of the APT34, or even if you take the example of the supply chain attacks like SolarWinds, I mean, among the various reasons it is called the most complex or advanced attack is because they effectively utilized the DNS in the most smartest way possible. Not only they utilize it to establish dynamic way of command and control communication, but they also use it very smartly to exfiltrate the data. Because it was a supply chain attack. They had no way to identify which networks they are compromising. So one way was, let's collect the machine information. And DNS tunneling helped them to those guys to a lot of extent. Now, what can we do about it? I think first of all, we have to start somewhere. When we speak to organizations, the first thing that comes across is the area of management of the DNS and the areas of whether it is unified, whether do we have the visibility of the DNS traffic, because you have cloud, you have work from home, you have IT, OT, all these places have DNS traffic, right? So that's one area where organization can start to say, do I have the right tools and technologies and processes to give me a single dashboard across my environment of the DNS traffic? Can I see at a real time what is happening? Because any security journey starts with the visibility. You cannot stop what you cannot see. There was also a comment from the panelists saying, out of 100 times, the bad guys have to be successful only once, and the good guys have to be successful 100 times. Guess what? The situation changes when the adversary is inside. You have to catch them only once. And DNS is the best tool that we have today that can help us detect those instances, because all the malwares and these smart codes they're writing all have this need to connect back to their infrastructure. Nobody's looking at DNS traffic as far as we see, because either the controls are very static, they're not dynamic enough. That's why the attacks like Sunburst can easily bypass. That is where we believe at Infoblox, this is the right time to implement what we call as the shift left of the enterprise security. You look at the attack life cycle, right? If you want to contain the threat at the first step of their communication, the DNS is the right place. And that is where Infoblox has invested quite a lot into the R&D and building those solutions which are very scalable, available on the cloud, hybrid in nature. And we have helped a lot of customers in India, the largest ITS companies, banking organizations, governments. They're leveraging our platforms because we are the first point of communication. It's an opportunity for good guys to use it as first point of enforcement as well. So that is where I would like to sum my comments.
Right. So the next point that I want to come to you is something about which I remember an incident. I was having this conversation with one of a very senior guy in the cybersecurity space. So the moment our conversation started, he said, you know what, in the next 10 years, there will be no cybersecurity personnel. I was like shocked. I'm sitting in his office and he's saying that in the next 10 years, there wouldn't be any. So I said, but what is the rationale behind such a statement? He said, you know, that the way technologies are developing, particularly in the field of automation, so much of automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning will get built in that there would be no need. Cybersecurity guys would be asked to do something else. That is a very contentious statement. I'm yet to see it fructify. 10 years is a little down the line. I don't know if you would agree with me. Do you think automation can play a role, at least in mitigating some of the security risks that are there?
So, first of all, those upcoming 10 years, it's very difficult to predict and see what happens. But right now, the world is grappling with the shortage of manpower in cybersecurity. All of the panelists sitting here know that how difficult it is to hire, retain, and utilize the resources, right? Having said that, one of the surprising statistics is every year, I'm sure most of you are traveling to conferences like RSA. There are hundreds of new cybersecurity OEMs, right? And when we look at and when we hear about all these new incidents that are happening, as a countermeasure, we look at what are the techniques they're using and we try to invest on the technology to be able to contain those techniques, right? But right now, the situation is, even COVID has taught us a lot of things. One of the things that has learned is how do we ensure the maximum outcome from the investment that you can do it, right? And automation is the best way. If you have, in a large enterprise, when you have tons of security tools, if they cannot talk to each other, they're not solving your problem, they're actually increasing your problem. If they cannot help you reduce the incident response time to a certain extent, if that figure cannot be defined in a word, in a number, then you're actually probably not doing it at the right way. So having said that, the automation is the way forward. Any new solution that any organization is evaluating, the first question that you should ask is this able to integrate with my existing investment? Because I've invested in firewalls, IPSs, proxies, cloud security. If it is just a point product, you're not solving one problem, you're adding 4 more problems for me.
Right. So I see that we are on top of the hour. Our time is over. However, I do want to, leave you with this provocative thought that do you think your jobs are on the line with the coming of new age technologies like automation, which can automate a lot of things? Maybe would somebody want to add to this? What are their views? Or by extension, are these conferences are on the line because automation is coming up in such a big way? I'm just, floating a few kind of thoughts to ponder on. The way technologies are improving, the way they are evolving. What is a problem statement today may not be a problem statement, say 10 years, 20 years down the line. We need to really up our ante in terms of thinking long term and seeing the general direction, the general drift of where technologies are taking us. It's been a lovely discussion where we spoke about how the threat landscape has evolved, how it has changed, what have been the contributory factors to it being very complex and difficult to manage, and we all agreed in some measure that there is a need for modernization as far as the cybersecurity architecture is concerned. It's been a lovely discussion, gentlemen, and I think we'll all take the leave of the audience here, which has been very patient. In case you have a question, a very brief one, we can possibly take it up, but a very brief one just in case there are. Otherwise, we can always chat up after we break. Thank you.